My name is Larry Crane. I'm the owner and main engineer at Jackpot Recording Studio in Portland, Oregon. This is Jackpot's control room. The centerpiece that everyone sees first, of course, is the mixing console. That is a Rupert Neve Designs 5088. These are hand-built down in Texas, and it's one of the last consoles that Rupert Neve, actually, it is the last console that Rupert Neve designed, of Neve Console fame. And I bought it because it's just over the top, best electronics and transformers and things you're ever going to get. And so we do a lot of the mixing and monitoring and stuff on this. It's actually a very unusual console in that it doesn't have equalizers and mic preamps built into it. It's just for routing and mixing and summing and monitoring. So that kind of confuses people sometimes, but because we have so much outboard equipment, we have tons of stuff to work with. So we signed the lease on a space in 1997, and it was over at 20th and Morris in Southeast Portland. And that space was like $500 a month, which seems crazy now. And this is, nearly 30 years ago. Really almost 9.5 years in, he said, I'm probably going to sell that property. So if you come up with a plan, you're going to have to move out. I was talking to Scott Hampton, who does the Hamptone Pro Audio Company. He'd been a friend for a long time. And I said, man, I'm getting the boot. And he goes, let's talk. So he and his wife, Michelle, had bought this property that we're on now. They were going to start building a shop for his business, Hamptone. And I got roped into that, and they built me a space to work out of. I've been here now since 2007 or 2008. Our patch bay has almost 1,000 points in it, and that interconnects everything in the studio. We use the Burl motherships. We have 2 of them. It's one of the highest quality digital to analog to digital converters that I think exists. This is mostly, or some of it is a lot of our preamps. And we also have a few compressors and things over here, like the BG2 from Highland Dynamics and Grace preamps. We have the 3 distressor compressors, which are really fun, and an old classic Teletronics from Universal Audio. These 2 racks showed up later as we expanded and kept buying too much equipment. But we have a few of the retro devices here, which are just amazing tube compressors. An old, probably 60s Spectrasonic compressor. These are all 500 series, and a lot of these are mic pre's, compressors, and some of these are all newer pieces of gear that we've kind of just stuck in here that we're going to assimilate into the studio in different capacities. I never thought I'd be doing any of this. I was really into film, and I wanted to do special effects for film. I would have been 13 when Star Wars came out, I think. So I was just captivated. I thought, John Dykstra, this is amazing, I was also taking classes in high school about electronics and stuff, and I learned how to build little boxes that would bleep, bleep, bleep and stuff. And then I went to college to study film. At that point, I kind of shied away from the idea of special effects. I was making cassettes. I was self-releasing these weird noise cassettes or electronic music things. I kind of fell into this band called Vomit Launch. And I'm like, well, you need a bass player. I'll borrow my roommate's bass. And we made 4 records, and we toured, and we played CBGBs, and Nirvana opened for us. And so we did our first 2 records with my friend Greg Freeman, 3rd and 4th records with John Bocciagalupi, and we were on his label. So, we had all this stuff going on. We had booking agents off and on, and I'd worked in restaurants, but I spent all my time driving around the van. The band broke up in 1992. About 6 months later, I moved up here in 1993. I was done. I was so broke. I was so extended on credit cards. I was stuck with the tour van. And then I started 4-tracking in my basement at my first rental. And then I moved into a place where we built my first studio. And so just things kept kind of rolling along. And then people would be like, can we come over and record something? And the next thing I knew, it was like Stephen Malkmus and Cap Power and Elliott Smith recording in my house. I mean, all this stuff just kept happening because of people I knew. It wasn't like I was a great recordist, but it was like, hey, I could do my demos at your house, or I could do the single. That got too busy, and then I moved out and what became Jackpot. This whole section down here has a lot of effects units with spring reverbs, digital reverbs, digital delays, more spring reverbs. Here's more of the retro, the 176 compressors, which are my favorite. And we actually have some gates that we use for tailoring sounds. Our tape decks are over here. We have two different tape decks. One is set up for 24 channel recording, and this one's set up for 16 track recording. And then we also have a 2-track 1/4-inch tape deck here. And these are all made by Otari, which was a Japanese company that built really high quality recording devices. And we keep these operating, which is no easy feat since they're all from like the late 80s. And they all sound really good to us, and we get a lot of work done on them. And we've got a lot of clients that come to us specifically because this stuff is operating and sounds good and works, so they can work in the analog realm. And so it's kind of nice. And then we do a lot of tape backup stuff for people archiving work with using some of these as well. So keeps the studio busy. I had to learn, like, how do you set a mic pre-level, So I just jumped in, going to the library and reading every book and going to Powell's Books, getting magazines. That was what led to TapeOp Magazine at the same time, like right before Jackpot. Once again, I had connections. So I knew people that did the buying for Tower magazines and stocked them all over the world. I knew people at record distributors that carried magazines like that. I was able to get them into Powell's because I knew people at Powell's. So I didn't feel that especially other magazines, were looking at the kind of music I was doing or interested in. It was sort of this idea that people on the indie labels would sort of negate their value because they didn't do it in a big fancy studio, So I wanted to talk about smaller studios and home recording and musicians recording themselves. But it's just a magazine about creative recording. And it's like, that could be creatively recorded or creative music. I didn't really care about even doing gear reviews back then. And I didn't even care, unfortunately, about getting people to buy ads. But, so I wasn't really making money, but I wanted something that just represented this other way of looking at the recording process and to bring it back to the music and the musicians and kind of tell people, my whole philosophy is like, you want to do something, just do it, obviously. I've done all these things, not even intentionally. But I always follow the thing. I go, I could do this, I want to tell other people, just don't worry about buying more recording equipment. Worry about the song and just find a way to capture it. Here is the producer's desk. A lot of equalizers are actually over here, and some of our mic preamps and stuff. But we have some gear that's no longer being made, like Pendulum Audio, old Daking units, and Animod. I think that might be in production again. Focusrite. We have these are Mercury, makes these wonderful Pultec style EQs, and Wonder Audio down in Texas makes these Neve style. This is a great pair of compressors from Hamptone called the HOC1s, and they are fantastic optical compressors. They're very unique. This is a rack of 8 EQs. At one point, Elliott Smith bought a console from Warner Brothers sound scoring film stage in Burbank. And we had it shipped up here, and it weighed like 4 tons, and we couldn't put it in the building, and so we parted it out. So these are actually equalizers from that console, and they're pretty cool. They're kind of mellow sounding, if that makes sense. And we got more compressors, 1176s, some Chandler gear, Moog EQs, which I really like, really, really excellent. So this area is, and we also have a great 8-channel DI box, so we can plug synthesizers right in and just record them directly. Working with Zach has been like the best. I mean, it's like, I looked at the calendar from last fall, and there was a month where Zach was basically the only one in here.
I am an engineer, producer, mixer, and studio manager here at Jackpot Recording Studio. It can be really daunting to come in here, especially for the first time. And we just try to help through the process and just make sure that, everyone has everything that they need, whether it's like a special cup of tea or they want it dark in the studio or they want it really bright. We want to make sure that we're sending people out the door with stuff that they're super happy with.
So let's go into the live room. Actually, getting in here, we just walked through one of the ISO booths where we can put amps or performers. There's 2 more over here on the corners of the room and then the large live space of the main room. And that allows us to put performers or amplifiers or whatever, like a sax player can play while there's a drummer out here, or the drummer can play in there. We can set up scenarios where we get the best audio. We don't have too much bleed. The colors in these rooms are all based on the colors of the original Jackpot, which were picked out with Elliott Smith. And one of the ideas that Elliott and I had was that every wall would be a different color in the live room. And you'd say, move the mic towards the purple wall, which nobody ever did. I'd never heard anyone say it. I never remembered to say it. I'd just say, go that way. So that was kind of a funny idea that didn't really happen. But we kept a lot of the colors when we moved in here just to keep the vibe of it feeling the same. The room's just full of things to grab and perform with, because I used to go to studios and they'd be like, oh, we can rent that, or we don't have that, when they talk about anything, a guitar amp, you name it. So I really wanted to have a place where you could just come in and have everything to record a typical band. The stomp boxes just keep growing. Companies actually just give us stuff because they want us to check it out. Other ones are, ones that friends make, and then other ones are just from my collection from over the years.
What are a few recent projects you worked on that you think people should know about?
Just did an awesome record for an artist named Storm Large. I work with this really fantastic band called Glitter Fox. I just did a great record with a band called The Departures called Hourglass.
I did a couple records for Poison Idea, and I remixed a few of their classic albums. I remixed a record for a band from Chicago recently called Track a Tiger, and Shady Cove last year. Their record Part 2 is one of my favorites.
What is next for you and Jackpot?
Well, I'm never going to retire. We're going to clean up some of the wiring and stuff in the control room here and kind of get things a little more streamlined. And we just keep it kind of cycling through, getting better mics and getting better equipment and fine-tuning what we offer here and making sure everything works.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. I love talking about all this stuff. I love being interviewed, strangely enough. And I love hosting people at the studio and making records and talking about making records. So it's always fun to do stuff like this.